I'm now ready to start working on the upper levels of the superstructure and the last of the central levels of the forward superstructure. These are steps 12 and 13 in the instructions. Of course, these parts are going to be augmented with a lot of photo etch, and then there are also a number of corrections that need to be made according to the HMS Hood Association. Today, I'll be removing these parts from the sprue and cleaning them up so that I can loosely fit them together so that I can plan out the next stage of the construction, which is modifying them according to the specification that is provided by the HMS Hood Association. Many of these components are going to be replaced with photo etch parts, so I'll cross those off at this point. I won't need the ladders. These will of course be replaced with photo etch. This structure over here is also going to be replaced with photo etch, so I don't need that. More ladders. This is replaced with photo etch. Can be seen here. The radars will also be replaced with photo etch. The Starfish platform also needs to be replaced with photo etch, although I'm not sure if all of it needs to be retained, so I need to look at the plastic part before I make that decision. These booms will also be replaced with photo etch, along with this one. I'm also not going to work on the signal lights at this point, so that means I need to use sprues A, B, and D. This is A18, this is the Admiral's Bridge. A21, 22, and 31 are all further components of that bridge. Part 26 is part of the forebridge and torpedo control platform, as well as part A27. A23 is the compass platform, along with A24. A25 is the upper air defense platform. Parts A15 and 16 go below the Admiral's Bridge. This will connect the Admiral's Bridge to the superstructure that I've already constructed. That completely consumes the parts on the A sprue. From the B sprue I need B3, B5 and B2, the components of the tripod mast. B6, the Starfish platform. And I understand this diagram. I have to retain this block and cylinder in the center of the Starfish platform. That shouldn't be too difficult. B7 and B8 goes on the top of the Starfish platform. On the D sprue I need D36 and 34. This is the base of the radar. And the rest is replaced with photo etch, so I actually don't need to cut off any of that. So this is my pile of components that I need to work with. Before I try and test fit these parts or loosely assemble them, I want to clean them up a bit. When I cut these components off the sprue, I didn't cut too close to the edge of the component because I didn't want to cut too close and then damage the plastic that I want to retain. The consequence of this is that there are multiple protrusions from these parts that now need to be removed. First step is to clip them down some more with my clippers. Once again, I'm not going to clip it too close to the edge of the component. I prefer to sand that last little bit, because if you do cut right on the edge, it has a tendency to pull the plastic and you can actually create a little divot into the part. Of course, I want to cut off as much as I can because the more I can cut off, the less I have to file and sand off, but I just don't want to cut off too much and then damage the component. After clipping the excess off all of these components, I then move on to the filing phase of the cleanup. This is just a Tamiya bar file. As is common with pretty much every component in this kit, there is some flashing, although on these components it's not too bad. There are also some seam lines on the components that need to be removed. These are caused by the contact surfaces between the two sides of the mold. With all of these components at least though, the sides of the mold are correctly aligned and there isn't a lot that needs to be done other than to remove that seam line. This can all be done quite easily with a file. The parts where this kind of misalignment of the seam lines is usually most notable are on cylinders, and you can see that for these tripod legs, they are circular. So they at least got this component right. I have definitely seen much worse in other kits. At least on these components, most of the connection points are in good positions. There are a few that are in bad positions, for example on this component. Here the connection line is very close to this lip at the top of the balustrade, and that lip needs to be retained. This does make it marginally more difficult to clean up these parts because you have to be careful to not accidentally remove that lip as well. Fortunately, on these parts, the connection point is easy to access from the side, so it's not much of a problem to get the bar file in and remove that excess. It's when they do this kind of a thing in a constrained area that it becomes very frustrating and very difficult to remove that excess plastic. Across all of these components, there were only 4 connection areas that had that problem. So by Trumpeter standards, I would say that's not bad. Other than that, there's nothing more to know about these parts regarding the cleanup. They're well shaped, a bit of flashing, and only a few occasions where there are unfortunate connection points. So now that that's done, let's start gluing these parts together. I'm going to start with these pieces of the superstructure for the Admiral's Bridge. If I glue them together at this point, it will allow me to then place the parts on top of it without the structure falling apart. My intention is not to glue these parts to the deck. I want the balustrades connected to each other such that I can place them on the deck and remove it. This will make it a lot easier to work with the deck in the future. There's some modifications that need to be made to it, and of course it will have to be painted, and the deck paint will be a different color to the bulkhead paint. To glue these bulkheads to each other, I use Revell Contactor Professional. If I were to use extra thin glue, it would flow down the joint between the balustrades onto the deck and then glue the components to the deck as well. While I'm gluing components together, I can also glue this component into this section of platform. I presume that this is just an artifact of how this component was molded. I don't see any reason other than that for it to be an individual component. I might as well glue it in now, and then when I start working with filling gaps, I can then also fill the gaps that have been left by these 2 components being joined to each other. It fits in very snugly. I don't think it would be easy to remove, but anyways, I glue it in place using extra thin plastic cement. Now, that platform goes on top of the superstructure for the Admiral's Bridge, and the tripod, well, at least 2 legs of the tripod are inserted through these holes, and another section of deck is placed on top of that. Going further up, there's the compass platform and the torpedo control position. They just sit on top of each other quite easily. And then another leg of the tripod mast goes on top of all of that. At the top of the tripod mast goes the Starfish platform. And I can now see why that plastic box and cylinder needs to be retained on the bottom of the Starfish platform. That is where the top of this tripod terminates. At this point though, it doesn't all fit together, so I'm going to need to adjust that notch on the top of these 2 legs to try and get it to fit into the small gap that it has. I'm going to try and file it down a bit. It is quite a big difference in size, so I think I'm going to have to take off quite a lot. I also need to take it off on the sides as well. Oh, well, there we go. I've overdone that. Well, I don't think that's really going to matter. There's still the cylindrical hole for the 3rd leg of the tripod mast to insert into. So this box section will just sit on top of the 2 legs of the tripod mast. I won't continue with trying to build the Starfish platform on top of the tripod mast. I'll just put it on the cutting mat and build it up from there. On top of the Starfish platform go 2 components that form the spotting top, and on top of that goes 2 components that form the base of the radar. This piece is off balance, so I can't just let it sit loosely where it's supposed to go. That will only stay in place once I've glued it down. Other than that, there's this small box. This goes underneath the Admiral's Bridge and will connect that platform to the superstructure that I had previously constructed. This can actually be glued together now, so I'll just quickly do that. I'm using Trumpeter extra thin plastic cement. These are the parts I'm going to be working with for the next 2 videos. I'm going to be modifying these according to the specification from the HMS Hood Association. There are a number of things that I can see off the top of my head that need to be done. For example, these bumps need to be removed, this needs to be widened, overhangs need to be created in various places, wind baffles need to be installed at the front of this component, that also needs to be widened. There are probably many other things that I have missed, but I'll go through each of these components one at a time and make the necessary modifications. I'll begin that process in the next HMS Hood Build Series video. If you would like to support this channel or see how this ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.